How's everyone feeling this morning? Wonderful. You all look beautiful as always. I see some of you got a new outfit on. Some of y'all got your hair did. Amen. God has been blessing you. Well, if you're just joining us for the first time, we are in week 7. Week 7 of a series that's entitled R-E or Re, and it is a study of the book of Nehemiah. And so do me a huge favor. If this is your first week, or if you kind of dropped in on this series in the middle of it, make sure you check out our Facebook page, which will give you links to all the messages. Or if you have iTunes, you can find us on iTunes. Just search NCC LaGrange, and you'll be able to catch a podcast. Here's why. Because you need to understand the content that we've been going through over the last several weeks. It's kind of like jumping into a movie in the last 15 minutes, and unless you saw the whole movie, what we're talking about is not going to make a whole lot of sense to you. It'll still be applicable, but it may not make a whole lot of sense to you without understanding the whole content. So make sure that you check that out. And then before we begin, remember, after service, if you're I through Q, I believe, over in the student room, we'll have the pastors' roundtables. It's just a chance for us to have some dialogue, to talk, for me to let you know where we're going in 2014, the next several months, but also to get an opportunity for us to talk, for you to share your heart with me as we move forward in what God has called us to do. Is that all right? And so we just want to make sure that we take time to do that. Now, we are week 7, and today every sermon starts with re. And so we talked about review, we talked about repenting, we talked about requesting. And so today we're talking about remembering. And really, that's just a way of calling us into a time where we have to understand that we have to have the faith and the focus, or we need to remember what we've been called to so that we don't get distracted. This week, and I shared this with some other people. This week, I was in my office, and I was doing some work, and I was trying to download some software because I was trying to edit a video for next week's baptism and baby dedication. And then up on my screen popped up, you need to update your Adobe Flash. You've seen that before, right? And that's not uncommon because, let's face it, Adobe updates every 5 minutes. And so I didn't think anything of it because it happens all the time. And so I clicked on it, and they got me, y'all. They got me. Because apparently the little icon that popped up wasn't real Adobe. And when I clicked on the pop-up, before I knew it, I was having a bunch of pop-ups. Pop, 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 pop. You've seen that before, right? You thought you were doing the right thing. You thought you were downloading, or you thought you were upgrading what you needed, and it just pop, 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 pop. Everything. And thank God it wasn't some crazy stuff that was popping up on my screen. You know, I'm trying to keep my job, so thank God it wasn't crazy. But here's what kept popping up, and you've probably seen this before. Everything that kept popping up was suggesting that it could upgrade my computer, or there was something wrong with my computer. Let me fix your computer. And then another pop-up. You need to order PC fix tool, and you need to order this. And all of these pop-ups presented themselves as opportunities. All of these things that popped up on my screen presented themselves as opportunities to do it better. And before you know it, I spent so much time trying to get rid of stuff on my screen that I forgot what I was doing in the first place. Anybody ever been there before? Where stuff just keeps popping up, pop, pop, pop. Stuff in your life keeps popping up, and stuff keeps happening and popping up, and you're just trying to do, and they all present themselves as good opportunities. Yeah, you should do this, and that'll make your life better. You should do this, and you should try this diet, and pop, 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 pop. And before you know it, you've forgotten what you were supposed to be doing in the first place. And so what I want to deal with this morning is, as we're moving along in our lives, and we're moving along and trying to do the vision or trying to meet the goals that God has set for us, we want to make sure, we want to understand that we need to remember what we were supposed to be doing in the first place. Because life is going to send you pop-ups. And oftentimes, the pop-ups that happen in your life, the things that pop up, pop, 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 always present themselves as good opportunities. Sometimes it's not bad. Sometimes it's stuff that will show up in your life, and it will appear to be a very good opportunity to advance yourself. It will appear to be a very good opportunity And then before you know it, you're so ingrained in all these pop-ups, pop, 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 that you forget what you were called to do. That you forget what God instructed you to do 3 weeks ago. You forget what God told you to do last year. You forget what you said you were going to accomplish this year, because life has a way of sending you pop-ups. Pop, pop, oh, that looks good. Pop, let me try that. Pop, let me click on this. Pop. And what I want to do is help us to be able to zero in on remembering or staying on focus and having the faith to stay on focus with what it is that God told you to do. Life's going to present you with opportunities. I want to share this with you just by way of practical exercise. Give me the next slide. Because what I learned is that there are opportunities that will present themselves in life, and if you're not careful, you won't be able to distinguish between those things that are urgent and those things that are really important. Those things that pop up in your life and they seem like, I need to handle this right now, and this is something. And here's the thing about urgent versus important. Urgent is usually somebody else's idea of what you should be doing. And most of us, and you heard this term before, most of us do what I call, we live in the urgent and not important zone. Everything that keeps popping up, we want to do it. Pop, pop, pop. And normally it usually has nothing to do with what God called you to do, but because it's urgent, because if I don't deal with this now, there's immediate ramifications, there's immediate results. But here's the thing about things that are urgent, even though there are immediate results, they usually don't last as long as the things that are really important. So if you look at this graph, the vertical axis represents the degree of importance. So at the top, or degree of urgency. At the top is urgent, at the bottom is not urgent. And then the horizontal axis represents what's important and what's not important. You see that? Now you can write that down if you want to, or you could just Google it. There's plenty of stuff out there that will help you. But here's how this helps me, because oftentimes there are so many pop-ups and opportunities, pop, pop, pop. And so many people present so many things. Hey, maybe we should do this. Or I get a call that says, maybe we should do that. Or I get an email, man, this is an opportunity, and pop, pop. And before you know it, if you're not careful, you will make important things not important things. You'll make urgent things important things. And here's the problem. Is oftentimes, I'll say it again, the things that are urgent may need to be addressed immediately, but if you just live in a constant state of urgency, you heard this term before, you will end up living your life in maintenance mode. Anybody ever been there before where it's just, I'm just trying to make it week to week, and because things keep popping up, I'm just trying to manage this week, and Lord, just help me to get to Sunday. And here's what happens in church. For us, it often becomes a sense of urgency because Sunday comes every week, doesn't it? You know, I try to figure out a new way to do this thing, but Sunday keeps happening every week. I got to keep preaching every week. It just keeps coming up. And here's what happens. When you live a life constantly in the box of urgency, you spend most of your time just trying to make it. And if you're not careful, pop, pop, pop. And you're focused on this, and I got to do that right now, and I need to do this. And before you know it, the things that are really important, you've neglected it. And that's true of Nehemiah. That's true of this story. And you should have read chapter 6, so I won't give you the whole chapter. We're just going to cover 3 verses. But Nehemiah comes in chapter 6 upon a situation that is just like a pop-up in our life. Remember, Nehemiah got this great idea, and he got this burden from God. He got this vision to rebuild the wall. And so we've gone through chapters 1 through 5. And then all of a sudden, last week we talked about in chapter 5, he had to deal with some internal struggles. He had to deal with some things that were happening on the inside. He had to deal with some stuff that was happening within the community. And then wouldn't you know it, as soon as he deals with that, chapter 6, here comes the enemy again. And you would think by now they would understand that we're going to get this done. Okay, some of y'all missed it. Some people around you should know, but by now, they're not going to get you off your task. Yeah. Some of you should understand, and some people around you need to understand that you've been trying all that you can to get me to not do what God called me, by now you should know I'm not coming down. But by now, these silly girls should know that I'm not coming down. I love my wife. I'm not going to do that. By now, some of these guys should know that I'm committed to my marriage, and that ain't going to happen. By now, the enemy should know it doesn't matter how bad you mess with me, I'm not coming down. And some of us need to just make sure that as we're living our life and things keep popping up, that we don't forget what's really important. That we don't live our lives in a constant state of urgency and panic and maintenance mode, but in fact, we begin to plan and pray and plot because there are some things that are more important than what's going on right now. I'm trying to build something for the future. I'm trying to build something for my babies and my grandbabies. I'm trying to build something that's going to bless this community. I'm trying to build something that's going to help somebody else believe. And even though there's pop-ups, I understand what's really important. In Nehemiah chapter 6, we learn and we see Nehemiah going right back to having to deal with what he was dealing with before chapter 5. We go right back into Nehemiah having to deal with the enemy. And here's all I want to cover this morning. I'm going to give you all chapter 6 just in case you didn't read it. But here's the verses I want to cover this morning. Nehemiah chapter 6, let's just read verses 1 through 3. Let's just read verses 1 through 3. Nehemiah chapter 6. Here it goes. Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies found that I had finished rebuilding the wall and that no gaps remained, though we had not yet set up the doors in the gates. So Sanballat and Geshem sent a message asking me to meet them in one of the villages in the plain of Ono. That's a bad sign right there. But I realized they were plotting to harm me, so I replied by sending this message to them. Check this out. I am engaged in a great work, so I can't come. Why should I stop working to come and meet with you? Some translations say, I am doing a great work, and I can't come down. So that's good right there already. We could probably just end. He says, I am doing a great work, and I can't. Why should I come down to meet you when God has called me to do something greater? Why should I stop what I'm doing in my life to come down and hang out with you? Nehemiah says, I am doing a great work, and I can't come down. If you flip on the back of your bulletins, I gave you a little eye chart to make sure you keep your focus. Just flip to the back. Make sure you read that. I want you to put it on your refrigerator. You know what that says? It says, doing a great work, and I can't come down. Just stick that on your refrigerator. This is your eye test. Whatever it is that God's called you to do, write it under there. Every time you go to the refrigerator, look at it and say, I'm doing a great work, and I can't come down. I refuse to compromise what God has called me to do. Check out Nehemiah, because Nehemiah is now dealing with a situation where he's dealt with what has gone on the inside. He's dealt with the culture issue. Remember we talked about that last week? And then here comes the enemy, and the enemy does basically three things. His first response is his response throughout the rest of the chapter, but the enemy does basically three things to try to get him to lose his focus. The first thing they did, you should have read this already, the first thing that they did is that they wanted to try to get him to come to a meeting with them in the plain of Ono. That's bad news right now. Somebody just say, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. Oh no, no. You're not going to get me to move, right? It's something about the fact that you want me to come and meet you in a place called Oh no. I already know that's trouble. Oh no, oh no, oh no. You're not going to fool me. Oh no, 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 no. I'm doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Nehemiah says, first thing they tried to do is they tried to get me to come to a meeting in a place called Oh no. I knew that was just, you didn't even have to spell that out. Oh no, I'm not going to do that. Then the second thing that they tried to do was, you should have read this, you should have did your homework. The second thing that they tried to do was they sent what he says was an open letter saying that in this letter they were accusing Nehemiah of wanting to be king. In other words, they started putting their mouth on him. Anybody in here ever had somebody say something about you that wasn't true? You ever had a situation that tried to prove you to be something that you never said you were trying to be? And Nehemiah, even though he would eventually become governor, they sent the open letter. Now check this out. Here's why it's important, because the letter in those days were sent by certain people, and it was sealed, and they put a seal or emblem on it to make sure that when it got to the person it was supposed to get to, that everybody knows that that letter had not been touched. And so part of the plot was, let's send an open letter because they know that there's some nosy folks, come on now, that as this letter is traveling throughout the region, they're going to open the letter and they're going to read what's in the letter. And the quickest way for us to start a rumor about Nehemiah is to put something on Facebook. I mean, never mind. The quickest way to start a rumor about somebody is to tweet. I mean, never mind. The quickest way for us to start a rumor about what Nehemiah is trying to do is let's send an open letter. Let's put it on social media. Let's tweet it, and let's talk about what he's trying to do, and let's start a rumor because they were trying to discredit him. And Nehemiah says they tried to get me to meet them. They put something on Facebook about me that wasn't true. They tweeting stuff that ain't got nothing to do with what we're trying to do. And then he says, here's the last thing they try to do. They try to set him up by using one of their own priests, check this out, within their own community. And he went to meet this guy thinking he was going to get some advice. He went to meet him thinking that he was going to get some guidance from God. And this guy had been paid off. He was a prophet, P-R-R-F-I-T. Yeah, don't miss that. And he had got paid off by Sanballat and Tobiah. And he told Nehemiah, what I want you to do is that you have to understand that they're trying to kill you. And so you need to run to the temple for safety. I'm going to fix that up in the end. You need to go into the church house where it's safe. And Nehemiah says, you know what? No matter what it is that they tried to do, no matter what it is that they tried to accomplish by bringing me down, he says they kept presenting these opportunities, pop. And here's why they presented themselves as opportunities. Because up until this point, everything that they said about or said to Nehemiah was a threat. Up until this point, all they did was threaten to attack. They threatened to attack the city. They threatened to attack the people. And up until this point, everything that came from the outside was negative. And then all of a sudden, they tried to switch the game up. Did you notice that? We just want to meet. No, brother, we just want to meet. All that stuff that we said, we were just joking. It's not that serious. We just want to have a meeting. We want to straighten this out. We see that you're doing something good, and we see that God is working in your life. And yeah, maybe we're a little bit jealous at first, but we really want to just validate what you're doing. We really want to support you. And so all we're asking for is a meeting. Pop. And it appeared to be an opportunity to finally put to bed this animosity between him and his enemy. Do you notice that? It presented itself as an opportunity. It presented itself as something urgent. Let's get this fixed right now. We just want to meet. We just want to meet you, that's all. Just meet us down in the plain of Oh No, and let's hash all this out. Let's just work this out. I know that we've had some difficulties. We've had some problems in how we related to each other, but all we want to do is have a meeting. Pop. And Nehemiah understands that even though this seems like a good opportunity, even though this has presented itself as an opportunity, even though this is just like a pop-up that pops up, he understands that I'm doing a great work, watch this, and I can't come down. It doesn't matter how great the opportunity seems, and it doesn't matter how many pop-ups happen in your life, you need to be clear, we need to be clear about the greatness, not about ourselves, but the greatness of the work that God has called us to do. Nehemiah says, check this out, I'm doing a great work, and I can't come down. You want to have a meeting, I get that, I understand that, yeah, you want to reconcile, but check this out, I'm doing something great. And he says, why should I come down? Why should the work stop? Why should I stop doing what God called me to do? Why should I stop being the person that God has called me to be? Why should I stop all that God has already accomplished? Remember, Nehemiah is almost done with the wall. He says, we're just trying to hang the gates. We just need the certificate of occupancy. We're going to do a walkthrough, and we're going to sign off on everything, and this bad boy is almost done. Why should I stop now? Can I just encourage somebody? You've been through too much hell for you to quit now. Why should you quit now? Some of us have had some things happen in our families, and we're praying for healing. Can I just say this? don't stop praying because you're doing a great work. No matter what it looks like and no matter how bad it gets and no matter what the doctors say, don't come down. I'm believing that I'm going to be healed. I'm believing that things are going to get better. I'm believing, and so I'm doing a great work. Don't come down. It's almost there. And Nehemiah says, man, we're just waiting for the contractors to show up. We're just waiting for the walkthrough. We're just waiting to hang the doors, man. We're almost done. Why should I stop now? He says, I'm doing a great work. I can't emphasize that enough because we have to understand that Nehemiah is not talking about himself. This is not narcissism. He's not conceited, but Pastor, isn't he being a little bit conceited? No, I just believe that he's convinced. I believe that he's convinced and he's convicted about not that I'm great, but that the work that God has called me to do is great. You know why that's good? Because Nehemiah, remember in the beginning, Nehemiah is, he says in the end of chapter 1, in those days I was the cupbearer. You remember that? And the cupbearer was a person who basically, it was actually not a bad job. He was kind of in charge of the king's royal apartment, and so he tried to help manage things. But then part of his job also is that he had to taste the wine and the food and everything to make sure that it wasn't poison. And even though it was a good job, he only had one time for the mess up. You know, it's not a whole lot of room for error in that job, right? You just got one day, and that's it. We need application, help wanted. And so Nehemiah starts off his book by saying, I'm the cupbearer. And somewhere throughout this process, we know eventually, we heard it last week, we know eventually that he will become the governor of Judah. He'll become the governor. And so he started off as the cupbearer, but at this point in time in the story, he's a construction worker. Okay, don't miss that. And here's why Nehemiah is not the one who's arrogant. Because Sanballat and Tobiah were governors. And so they had a little bit of political power. They had a little bit of juice. They had a little bit of pull. And so for them to say, we want to have a meeting with you, should have meant something. After all, we got a little bit of power. You're just a construction worker. You're just a janitor. You're just a carpenter. You're just a cashier. You're just a substitute teacher. You're just a stay-at-home mom. But here's what Nehemiah says. He says that even though I don't have the title, I understand that the work that God has called me to do right where I am is great. Don't miss that. Don't miss that. Don't miss that. Because it doesn't matter what you do in life. It doesn't matter what your title is. Please understand this, that you are valuable to God because of the work that he's called you to do. So if you're a stay-at-home mom, don't come down. That's a great work. That's a great work. If you're a substitute teacher, don't worry about it. That's a great work. If you're a janitor or a judge, don't come down because the work that God called you to do is great. From promised land to prime timers. It doesn't matter where you are or what your position is. Nehemiah says, I'm just a construction worker, but the work that God called me to is great. Don't ever minimize yourself. Don't ever minimize where you are. You may just be a cashier, but can we take the jest out and say, I'm a cashier and I'm doing a great work? Don't ever minimize yourself. You say, you know what, I don't even have a job. I just stay home with my kids. Don't ever minimize yourself. You're a stay-at-home mom, do your thing, baby. That's a great work. We got some that say, you know what, I work outside the home and I'm doing my thing and I'm trying to help and I'm a career woman. You know what? Do your thing. That's a great work. No matter what you do, understand this, it's not about you, it's about the fact that God has called you to do something great. And Nehemiah says, you know, I'm a construction worker, and I probably should meet with them because they're political officials. They are people who have a little bit of juice, have a little pull. He says, but it's more arrogant of them to think that they should pull me away from what God called me to do than for me to tell them I'm not going to meet them. So I'm not conceited. I'm not arrogant, I'm just convinced and I'm just convicted that God has called me to do a great work. Nehemiah says, I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. Students, whatever you're doing at school, don't let anybody bring you down. You know why? Because some people refuse to come up, so they try to bring you down. And don't ever let somebody tell you And don't ever let somebody influence you into coming down from where God has called you to be. Nehemiah says, I'm doing a great work. I'm doing a great work. It's not about me. I'm not great, but the work that God has called me to do is great. And no matter how many pop-ups come up in your life that seem like opportunities to advance yourself, always remember what God called you to do. Why? Because the work that he's called you to do is great. Nehemiah says, they tried to first get me to meet them in this place called no. I'm doing, the work that I'm doing is too great for me to stop what I'm doing. Some of us are helping to raise other people's kids. You're doing a great work. Some of us are foster parents. You're doing a great work. Some of us are helping our grandbabies. You're doing a great work. Don't come down. No matter how hard it gets, and no matter how difficult it becomes, you are doing a great work. Some of us says, you know what, I just love to cook. Well, do it for Jesus. That's a great work. And no matter where you find yourself in life, everything that you do when God calls you to do it is a great work. So whatever it is that you want to contribute to, however you want to help us rebuild the wall, understand this: whatever God has gifted you and called you to do, don't ever minimize yourself, and don't ever let anybody else minimize you. What you are doing is a great work. Nehemiah says, I might just be a construction worker, I might just be a carpenter, but I can't come down because the work is great. You know another Jewish carpenter that said that? When he was hanging on the cross and they said, if you're really the Son of God, why don't you get me down? Remember there was a meeting on the cross, and they said, and one guy said, if you're really the Son of God, get us down, get yourself down and get us down too. And Jesus says, I might just be a carpenter, but I'm doing a great work and I can't come down. There's too many people depending on me. There's too many souls that need to be saved. There's too many people that need to be set free from the bondage of sin. I know I might just be a construction worker, a cashier, but I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. Don't you dare come down. Don't you dare come down. Don't ever let anybody pull you down. Don't you dare come down from what God has called you to be. And stuff's going to happen. Stuff's going to pop up, pop. And you might click on it, pop. Oh, that looks good. Let me try that. Let me go here. Let me do. But Nehemiah says, I'm so clear about the fact that the greatness that is going to be accomplished has nothing to do with me. It's about the fact that the work that God has called me to is great. He says, I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. Now here's where it gets difficult, because the work that Nehemiah was called to do and the greatness of the work that he was called to do meant that he had to assess the maximum potential impact versus the maximum potential injury. Did you notice that? Because for the first time, it wasn't just about what they were threatening to do. Nehemiah understood that they got real slick with their strategy. That meant that the closer we got, they really mean what they say. They want to kill me. My life is at stake here. It was one thing when they were just threatening it, he said, but when they switched it up and said, we just want to have a meeting, he understood, okay, now they really mean what they say. They really want me dead. They really want to kill me. And can I say this? Being a visionary means that you have to be willing to risk it all. The degree to which you can have an impact on somebody's life is dictated about the degree to which you're willing to give your life to it. See, Nehemiah says, this work is so great, and let me show you why I'm not arrogant, because I'm willing to risk my own life to make sure that I follow the calling that God has given for me. The work is great, and it's not about me, and it's so much not about me that I'm willing to risk it all so that God can do what he wants to do. Nehemiah says, I need to assess, and maybe some of us need to assess the maximum potential impact versus the maximum potential injury. And Nehemiah understood that eventually what God has called me to do, has the potential to impact thousands of lives. I may not be able to see it. I may be dead and gone. before it happens. I may be dead and gone before I see what I did for my grandbaby bless them. I may be dead and gone before I see what I did at the grocery store as a cashier bless somebody else. I may not be able to see it, but the maximum potential impact is greater than the maximum potential injury. Yes, they want to kill me, but what God has called me to is worth my life. I cannot come down. Yeah, it's going to get hard. And yeah, there will be threats. And yeah, there will be some things that threaten to destroy your household or to destroy your marriage or to destroy. Yeah, there's going to be threats. But the maximum potential impact always outweighs the maximum potential injury. And it is so much not about me that I understand that even though it may cost me my life, I cannot come down. Just bump your neighbor and say, don't come down, don't come down, don't come down. Come on, just nudge them. Don't be scared, don't be scared. Just nudge them and say, I can't come down. Do your thing, baby. I can't come down. I will not be moved. And if you want to be a visionary, you got to get to the place where you're willing to give your life to what God called you to do. Nehemiah understood that it's not about what I say anymore. It's about me living out this truth in front of everybody else. And even though I got pop-ups that seem like opportunities to even watch this, I have an opportunity to possibly even save my own life, but I'm not going to do it. Yeah. This meeting has a potential. Maybe they're telling the truth, and maybe if I do meet them, maybe we can hash this out. But he understood, but that means that the work will stop. Can I say this? Never compromise your integrity. Never compromise your personal integrity because it has a potential to save your own life. Okay, because Jesus said it like this: whoever wants to save their life will lose it. And whoever wants to lose their life, they'll keep trying to save it. And the maximum potential impact is far greater than whatever you can do to me. Yes, you can take me, I'll be dead and gone, but I know as long as I keep on the wall and as long as I refuse to come down, somebody's life will be changed. I said this to somebody else, the other day. I'm really just getting to the place now where I'm becoming even more convicted about the stuff I preach about. It's not that you don't believe it, but every time you get up here and stand something, please understand this, the next day I'm going to be challenged with the same stuff I just said. And it begins to develop in you a strong conviction, not for yourself, but for the work that God has called you to do. Don't come down. Nehemiah says, there's a great risk. There's a great risk at what I'm doing here. There's a great risk for my own life. But no matter how many pop-ups I get, I'm heavily influenced, and I have the faith and the focus, and I remember what I'm here for in the first place. That what we're doing has the potential to impact thousands of lives. Can I just say that about us as a church? That what we're trying to accomplish and the work that God has called us to do, and none of us may be here to see it when it happens, but we cannot come down because the impact that is possible outweighs the injury that's possible. So Nehemiah says, I have the faith, I have the focus, and no matter how many things pop up in my life and appear to be great opportunities, I cannot come down. Remember why you're doing it in the first place. Remember why you're serving those babies back in Promised Land in the first place. You may not see them be able to grow up. Remember why you're serving our teenagers. Remember why you're at the door ushering and greeting, and you're shaking hands, and you're making people feel welcome, and you may not ever be able to see the maximum potential impact, but trust me when I say this, you are doing a great work. And Nehemiah says, you know what? They tried to hit me with 3 different things, but I understood that I cannot come down. There's a story of a woman. She's at the Super Bowl. One of my life goals, I want to go to the Super Bowl. I prefer that my Falcons be in it, but that ain't looking too good. So y'all pray for my Falcons. Y'all pray for them. But I always wanted to go to a Super Bowl. just in case anybody want to bless your pastor. But anyway, I'm just saying. uh, so she's at the Super Bowl, and it costs thousands of dollars to get Super Bowl tickets. And a guy comes in just before the game gets ready to start, and he sits next to her, and there's an empty seat. The house is packed, and there's one empty seat. And he looks next to the woman. He says, "I wonder whose seat that is." I mean, who would have a Super Bowl ticket and not show up? I mean, the value of these tickets are extremely expensive. Who would do that? And she said, "You know what? It's actually belonged to my husband, and he passed away." And he said, "Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm really sorry to hear that. But you would think that maybe his brother or somebody in the family would still use the ticket. I mean, there's an extreme value." She says, "I know. He saved up his whole life to be able to purchase this ticket." He said, well, why didn't anybody else come to the game? I mean, that ticket is extremely valuable." She says, "I don't know. They just insisted on going to the funeral." So, ask your neighbor. Pop. Can we say this? When you understand the cost, remember we said this last week, when you understand the cost of what it meant for Jesus to die on the cross, for you to understand your value. When you understand that Jesus died on the cross, and that makes you extremely valuable. When you understand the cost, remember I said last week, your cost was the cross. That makes you extremely valuable. So check this out. If you understand just how valuable you are, won't that make you get in the game? Okay, some of y'all missed it. Because Nehemiah says, "I'm just a construction worker, I'm just a carpenter, but I understand the work that God has called." Remember last week we said that he was trying to communicate a culture where people understood that they are fully redeemed, that they understand their intrinsic value, that's how much Jesus wanted you on his team, that he gave his life for you. So wouldn't that make you want to get in the game? And Nehemiah says, "You know what? They tried so many different ways to get me to come down off that wall. Pop, here's another opportunity. Pop, here's another opportunity. Pop, stay in urgent zone. Pop, stay in maintenance mode. Pop, stay living a life where you're just trying to get by week to week with no plans for your future, no vision. Pop." And Nehemiah says, even though what's happening right now may look like a great opportunity, I understand that I can't come down because what I'm doing is of value. And so Nehemiah then has to deal with something that I think, and here's where I'm going to go, and then we'll wrap it up. Nehemiah has to deal with something that I think has been a problem for the church, not just this church, but a problem for the church for many years. Check this out. Remember I said Nehemiah goes to the local priest, one who is actually from their hometown. He goes thinking he's going to get some advice, and the priest tells him, "Here's what you ought to do. I think that you should, because they're going to kill you, go to the temple and run in there because that's the safest place to be." And a couple things you need to know about that. Nehemiah, despite all the other people who helped rebuild over the years of Israel being in captivity, Nehemiah was the first who was not a priest. Okay, some of y'all just missed it because you ain't got to be me to do something big. Okay, we'll deal with that another time. You don't have to be a pastor to do something big. You don't have to be a priest. Nehemiah was the first one who wasn't a priest, but the law says that you cannot go into the inner court unless you're a priest. And so here's what the guy tried to set him up to do. He tried to set him up so that Nehemiah would lose faith and lose integrity among the people. He says, just go in, man. Just go in. The church is the safest place for you to be. Yeah, there's a risk, there's a bounty, there's a price on your head, and so the safest place for you to be is in the church. Some of y'all missed it. The safest place for you to be is to run in on Sunday morning and ignore what's going on in the world. He says, yeah, there's a lot of ugly stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in the community. People are dying. He says, you know what you need to do? You need to go to church because it's safe. Okay, some of y'all missed it. some of y'all missed it. You might catch it on Tuesday. He says, here's what you ought to do, because even though the work that God has called you to do is great, it comes at a great risk for your own life. And so what you need to do is go to the safest place you know and hide out inside. Come on, get with me. Hide out inside the church. Yeah, forget what's going on outside the four walls. Forget the fact that there's people dying. Forget the fact that there's stuff going on in the community. Forget the fact that our children need our help. Forget the fact, no. Just go to the church because it's safe. And Nehemiah says, you know what? Even though that seems like a good idea, pop. Even though it seems like a good idea to just live my life within the safety of the four walls of the temple, pop. He says, I understand that the great work that God is calling me to do is not just about me doing church. Okay, some of y'all missed it. Because what the church has not done a really good job of is we have not told people that this is not supposed to be the place where you come to be safe from what's going on out there. And so Nehemiah says, that sounds like a good idea, but I can't come down. I can't even come down just to live a life. In other words, that's kind of a lesser calling to just be a church member. It's just kind of a lesser calling just to think I can come in and stay safe from what's going on. It's a lesser calling. He says the wall is designed to be a blessing to those who don't believe. The wall is designed to be a blessing to the community. And for me to come down would be a lesser calling. For me to just be satisfied with just running into church, he says, that's a lesser calling. Don't come down. Don't just be a pew sitter. That's a lesser calling. Don't come down. Don't be the type of Christian that says, I'm going to keep my eyes closed and my ears plugged, and I'm not going to understand or try to engage culture. I'm not going to do anything that's going to be a blessing to the community. Nehemiah says that I cannot come down from the work that we as believers are called to do in the streets. Okay, some of y'all not feeling me. Because the church was never designed, watch this, the church is the only organization that does not exist for its members. Yeah, we want to be a blessing to one another. Yeah, we want to serve each other. We want to pray. We want to gather. We want to encourage each other. But the church was never designed to be the place that is only designed to bless the people that belong to it. And so Nehemiah says, no, that's a lesser calling. It would be nice to just run to the church where it's safe and not deal with what's going on in the community, but I got to finish this work because there's some folks in the community who need to see God working. So we can't come down. We can't come down from feeding folks in the food pantry. We can't come down from hosting Career Connect. We can't come down from doing stuff in the community. You know why? Because it's a great work. And the church was never designed to merely be a blessing for those who are the believers. That there are people outside of these walls who don't know Jesus. And Nehemiah says to come down and run the church as a place of safety from what's going on in the world, that's a lesser calling for my life. I cannot come down. So can I tell you what we're not going to come down from as a church? Give me those statistics. Go back. Go back one slide for me. Check this out. Here's what I found out. In Troup County, approximately 52% of people report no religious affiliation. None at all. Which means that those people are most likely not followers of Jesus Christ. Here's what that translates to. That translates to almost 28,000 people who are most likely not Jesus followers. So the question is, are we going to run to the church every week where it's safe? Are we going to come down from a lesser calling in this community to be a blessing to people, to love people, to accept people, to introduce people to Jesus Christ? Are we going to come down from the wall? Are we going to come down from the thing that God is doing that is so great? Are we going to come down from the fact that there are 28,000 people who probably don't know Jesus, and coming down and running to the church every week where it's safe is a lesser calling? Guess what we're not going to do? We are not coming down. So here's what I want to challenge you with, because I'm done. Put this on your refrigerator. List all the stuff that you know God is calling you to do right now in your life. You might be raising grandbabies. You might be a substitute teacher. You might be a stay-at-home mom. Whatever it is that God is calling you to do, wherever you are, don't worry about your title. Don't worry about what you are or not on the job. But you need to understand, and you need to look at this every single day before you leave the house. Write down all the stuff that you're doing right now and say, you know what? I cannot come down because I'm doing a great work. Yeah, I'm taking care of my kids, or I'm working on my marriage, or I'm at school and I'm a teacher, and I work long hours and I'm underappreciated. Please don't give up because you're doing a great work. Don't come down. Probably don't even know Jesus. And our call as a church is not to run inside of here where it's safe. It's to come here, get rejuvenated, and go out there and bring in the harvest. We cannot come down. Let's pray. God, we thank you. We love you so much, Jesus, for making the decision so many years ago not to come down from the cross. Because you looked into 2014 and you saw me. You looked into 2014 and you saw someone who at 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 didn't know you, but you died on the cross anyway because you realized that the maximum potential impact outweighs even your life. So God, help us to be people who remember what we're here to do in the first place. Help us to understand that no matter what our title, our position, whatever season we are in life, you have called us to do a great work. Help us to remain focused. Help us to keep our faith. Help us not to come down. And then God, help us as a church where there are approximately 28,000 people in this county that probably don't know you. Help us not to come down from the work of spreading the gospel, of teaching people about Jesus, of loving people, of feeding people, of doing things in the community that will show people that God is building something and it will help them believe. God, help us to never as a church come down to a lesser calling of just doing church on Sunday. God, we thank you. We love you. Jesus, thank you for not coming down because it opened the door for me to know you. God, we thank you. And we love you. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. God bless you. Make sure you put this on your fridge. Keep working on it. We'll see you next Sunday.